So today I'm just going to discuss a couple things I wish I knew before I started modifying my car. Okay, number one, I haven't really seen this covered as much, but it's really important to keep your stock OEM parts when you switch stuff out. I experienced this a little bit with my red car actually, because before I sold that one, I pretty much removed all the cosmetic stuff, returned it to stock when I sold it to get the GT. And a stock car is always going to appeal to more buyers on the market compared to one that's modified. The second thing you should know before you get into modifying your car is actually take the time to make a plan and kind of set a purpose for your car. What's it going to be used for? Is it a, typical street car, daily driver? There's some mods you might want to avoid if that's your use case for the car. That would maybe ruin the driving experience, and it would save you a lot more money if you find out you don't have to buy certain modifications to fit that purpose. The third thing on my list is you should have a budget for your car. It kind of goes in sequence, right? You decide the purpose for that car. Now you set a budget and sort of go shopping through the catalog list of what you want to buy for it. This is kind of tough when it comes to cars. I haven't really seen a lot of people stick to budgets when it comes to building your car. It's always, well, this is like $200 here. Oh, that suspension's like $2,000. I'll throw that on here. Now I'm gonna buy this and this and that. And it can get kind of out of hand, and that's where it's very popular for you to see builds that are where people are $30,000 in on top of the value of the car, and it's a very impressive machine, but you can also kind of get a similar level of enjoyment from your car if you have a plan and budget and you stick to it. And hey, you can only spend like 10 or 15 grand all in if your car is a pretty basic combination. So setting a budget's really important. For me, I set the purpose and plan of the car. I set that for the current stage it's in. I didn't want to spend more than $10,000. So that's kind of where I'm at with the car. I'm within my theoretical budget, and budgets change. This is true in projects for actual work and other stuff and real applications, and for car stuff, budgets change and adjust, but it's good to just plan stuff out. So just hit the gym. Now we're going to get into my next thing you should know before modifying your car, that you should not finance your car parts. It's harmful for your credit because you're opening up several lines of credit that are short for maybe, a few months. And now your credit report is going to show the age of your credit isn't that long because you just keep opening up smaller lines of credit and stacking those up on top of each other. So I just don't think it's a good move. General rule of thumb is that if you're gonna buy a car part, just make sure you can afford it, or that's in your budget for what you want to do to the car. As I mentioned, your budgets can change, it can be fluid. It depends on your objectives with the car as long as you plan it. But you shouldn't be financing your car parts or just stacking on debt just for certain car parts. They don't have a lot of intrinsic value themselves, and it's kind of weird. What if you owe a bank 10 grand in car parts or something, or if you've affirmed 10 grand worth of car parts, you sell the car and you're still making payments on parts on the car that you sold. That kind of scenario is just weird, so I just wouldn't finance car parts. Next on my list is that you should build your car to your skill level. This is something I kind of picked up on when I started this project. I found that it's very easy to just put a bunch of parts in your shopping carts, order them, install stuff because it's fun, or I don't know, you have an inherent itch to just shop around and buy car parts. I felt that a lot, but I found it a lot more rewarding to, for example, take my car to the track in bone stock form, have notes on where I want to improve it dynamically, buy mods that fulfill that need, and then try it out again on the track or enjoy the car on back roads. It's a very rewarding process, and it feels like you've almost earned the modifications. At level 1 of your car, you mastered the full stock Mustang GT experience. Now you need to have more power, or you want power higher in the rev range and you want it to rev to 8,000 RPM. That's your next mod. Once you've mastered handling that power, suspension's next, you do that. And it's just a very rewarding process to go through with your car. And it really adds a lot more to the ownership experience and modification experience. So I would say modify your car to your skill level and grow with the car. Now next on the list is that when you're getting into a new platform, do a lot of research when it comes to the modifications you're going to buy or the route you want to go with the car. Really look up the parts you're buying, tuners, and have multiple sources of information. You know, if you're in a group chat and you hear one thing or one opinion about a part and you think, yes, I really want to get that part, it can be a bit of an echo chamber. So it's good to kind of gather a range of different opinions, but more importantly, get concrete data to help you in your search or help you make the ultimate purchase decision. I found that to be very useful as far as finding a tuner for my car. I mean, to me, tuning an NA Mustang isn't that crazy, so a lot of tuners will be able to work with that. And for me, I've also used that to when I'm buying my long tube headers, deciding what intake manifold to go to for my use case, so on and so forth. Same with suspension. It can be a bit of a boring process at times. You know, if it's a part that you just want to buy and install in the car now, it can be hard to take the time to sit down and spend, you know, the 30 minutes or an hour or even a few days sometimes, it depends, just to find the right part for your car. So this next one is pretty popular, but it's the rule of buy once, cry once. Just buy quality parts. It's expensive and it'll hurt your wallet in the short term, but long term, you have a car that can be A, parted out pretty well and you can get a good return on your money, or B, if the parts are good enough, someone who's interested in buying your car might also like those same mods, and it could be a pretty solid package deal. But the other consideration for me is that I just wanted to avoid long-term issues with the car or having to constantly tweak it because of a wonky sensor or wonky header issue. Prime example for me is that I have Cook's long tube headers. There are cheaper headers on the market like JBA or Texas Speed. However, some of those headers can have issues with clearances. And what happens with that is when the motor twists under acceleration, the header will actually hit the chassis, and that'll send false knock codes to your OBD2, and it'll present issues for you when you're trying to just enjoy your car. So for me, I didn't want to deal with that. Another issue with some cheaper headers is that the position of the O2s isn't ideal. Instead of being tilted, they might just be, you know, flat. That's not a really good way to describe it, but essentially it means that condensation in your headers or, you know, exhaust fumes, for instance, they can cause the O2s to foul. And then even if you bought headers for $1,200 instead of $1,600, you have to buy new O2s and have to worry about that continuously. So for me, I would just buy once, cry once, buy quality parts. It's worth it in the end. There are some exceptions. For example, I don't think cosmetic parts are really that, you know, integral. I'm talking more about like operational or functional parts, right? So an engine part, I don't want to cheap out on that. But for exterior, you know, if you can get a good deal for an exterior part and it's all just cosmetic, it doesn't really matter. If it looks good, it looks good. I'm not a huge cosmetics guy. This car has mainly been all about just function, some form, but those are my thoughts. Now, the next point I want to make is that you should build your car for you. Don't build it for the validation of others. Don't build it because, you know, you want to try and compete with your buddy because they have a shinier set of wheels than you. You know, cars are something that, you know, that car guys like us are pretty passionate about. And for me, you know, I enjoy it just for the sake of either the performance of the car, how the car feels, and I modify my car just to make it feel the way I like or look the way I like. I think it's a slippery slope if you kind of start building your car for other people or for attention on social media or anything like that. You can come away from a car and just think, what have I just made? I might have liked something more subtle, but because of, you know, what other people were saying, I went and got a wrap, spent $2,000 on a big wing, and I'm not really happy with it. So, you know, just build the car for you, have fun with it, and that's my next point for that. Another point I want to address, it's a pretty common one, but maintenance comes first over any kind of performance mods or aesthetic mods. Just want to make sure that your car is functioning correctly before you try pushing it. And guys, I have to say, doing all the maintenance on a car isn't really sexy at all. It's not fun. It's like a laundry list of stuff. It can get annoying after a while. Like, for example, if I wanted to buy an exhaust for a while or do suspension parts, but I needed to do brakes, rotors, pads, fluid changes, all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of boring, I have to say, but it's really important because if you don't have, you know, good brakes, can't stop, end up crashing, that's not fun. So do your maintenance first, prioritize that. So now we're parked, we're out here, gonna take some pics. Point number 10 of things you should know before you start modifying your car. It's kind of the sad truth that mods don't always add value to your car. It's just kind of a fact where you kind of have to treat mods as a sunk cost when you're starting to modify and enjoy a car. At least that's kind of been my methodology for doing it. Basically just thinking, if I spend this like 5 or 10 grand and put it into this car, that's money I'm not getting back. That's just something I'm gonna enjoy. And that's kind of like what the car hobby is, essentially. But there are cases where, you know, if someone puts a lot of money into their car or like boosts it, and there's a market for boosted cars of a certain platform, like that's really big for Mustangs. People will buy like positive displacement blowers, centrifugal blower Mustangs, all that. There's a market for modified Mustangs, and people understand the value of having a reliable 650 wheel horsepower car, but that doesn't always translate to different platforms. A good example of this is that way back when, I think it was Gintani, they tuned a twin turbo E92 M3, and it was the first twin turbo kit developed for that platform. If I'm not mistaken, people feel free to fact check me. But the owner enjoyed this kit. However, when it came time to move on to a different platform or sell the car, it was very hard to sell because the owner priced in the R&D and install of that kit into selling an E92 M3. And at the time, values for E92s weren't crazy like they are now, but it's just kind of a lesson that not everyone's going to see the value of the mods that you put into your car. So parting out cars is very popular for a reason. A bone stock car has a wider market of buyers who would like it compared to a very specifically modified car. Now, there are cases where like wheels, I think wheels can, you know, be pretty good for value depending on if it's like a T37 or a BBS E88 or something like that. You'll see it a lot on listings where people say, oh, with the wheels it's this price, without the wheels it's like $2,000 or $5,000 cheaper or something, depending on the wheels. But it just kind of shows mods are very specific to your tastes in the car, so you can't always bank on, if I spend 20 grand on my car, I'm gonna get that out once I try to sell it. But thank you for watching the video. Leave some feedback. What do you guys think are other things you should know before you start modifying your car? I don't claim to be an expert. I mean, as I said, this car's kind of been my first venture into modifying like a car. So I'm really open to hear what you guys think. So have a good one.